Noam Brown discussed recently about the same thing. About when he was asked about is O1 going to do, or future models of O1 going to do massive computations, and he said it is massively inefficient to think that future models like O1 would have to compute large sums of multiplication, matrix multiplication, and they should actually make an API call to a calculator, to a Python script, and not do the stuff all by itself. That's computationally inefficient. So within that space, CPUs do have some value in comparison to GPUs in terms of bang to your buck.
I love that point. That's an idea I've been thinking about so much the past few years. Like, even if you just look at LLMs, so much of what they do in the during a call to an LLM is something that could just be a program, like a normal program running. And in almost all of those cases, the normal program would be like millions of times more efficient than the tensor ops in the LLM to do that like little part. So the question of how you make them efficiently delegate out those tasks is really interesting. But another thing I wanted to say is with Apple's chips, I'm not sure how valuable they are on the server compared to in consumer devices, because one thing for me personally is like, I'm not interested in these like GB200s and stuff. I'm interested in B200s with x86, because in my experience, x86 is always way more performant for stuff that matters and saves up time for the GPU itself. So I'm like really bullish on x86, and that's part of why, like with Apple's chips, I think they're interesting for consumer, and like with ARM in general, I think it's interesting for consumer. But like, I'm really bullish on the like exact opposite of this like super parallel, super slow, energy efficient thing everybody's been moving towards, because I think like there's always going to be a balance of use cases in the future, and you don't really know what's going to pop up. And so like having something that's just really fast at doing like sequential conditional work and can do big vectorization and stuff like that, that's always going to be useful.
I heard something about NVIDIA that was really interesting, and I'm curious what you guys would guess that for data center revenue, what percentage of it is fabric versus hardware, Mellanox, Interconnect versus H100.
That was the Israeli company they bought.
Yeah.
Facebook moved away from that, actually. So if you read the Facebook info document, because with NVIDIA, when you connect a whole bunch of cards with NVLink, you only end up with like max like 650 gigabit or so, like when you fully saturated. And I think on the NVLink 4 is a little bit higher, but not that much higher. What Facebook did is they got rid of that completely, and they just went with Ethernet. So all they do is they do RDMA over Ethernet, like remote direct memory access or whatever it is, and they just pile on PCIe cards that are 100 gigabit, or so they end up with like 400 gigabit of fiber per GPU, and so it's not going to be as good as NVLink, which is like over 600. But with that, they can just say, oh, our cluster just needs like 15% more GPU. We'll just grab them from the other data center. We have direct fiber there. So you can just route and scale however you want it that way. So Facebook needs to do way more GPUs, and they scale that way. And I think for Grok, they're doing RDMA as well, but it's not confirmed. Facebook is in the design document. So they make a lot of money on that, but that's not strictly necessary.
Interesting.
So
yeah, I think Azure, and I think the clouds use them, but it's interesting to see if like actual dedicated like XAI is foregoing it or not. I'm curious about that. But I heard a surprising number that I was very taken aback by, that a good chunk of revenue is actually not the actual chip, but the interconnect.
Or the number.
Yeah, I probably should just leave it at that. But you know, I thought that was interesting. What else is going on in the market? There's there's quite a lot, but nothing that's too wild. I'm shorting Truth Social, which is kind of fun. And one of the thesis I have here is that no matter what happens in the next 4 years, Trump won't be president ever again. And when I hear you guys talk about like 5-year or 10-year timeframes for a company, as a hardcore finance student, the time frame for a company is infinite. It is the infinite discount sum of cash flows. And so, like, if NVIDIA has a big problem in year 10, this is basically like NVIDIA is going to be down 95% because the sum of cash flows for the next 5 or 10 years is fairly limited. It's really the tail years count a lot. And so, I sort of think of things that way. And so Trump is, the company has almost no revenue right now. They have 4 years to scale and 4 years to get sort of a permanent business. But to the extent Truth Social lives or dies based on Trump, and so far it's sort of died, 4 years from now, it's certainly not going to have any users or profit potential. So to me, as a multi-billion-dollar company, that seems like a fairly obvious short. It may take a while, and there's certainly people that want to buy the stock to support the president, which is fine, but maybe not the best investment. And that one's been sort of interesting. Biotech is this like very weird thing where this December there's like 50 companies reporting their like multiple years fruits of labor all in 1 month. And so I'm waiting on a bunch of those, which unfortunately will likely be disappointing, but for those companies at least. But in terms of pharma, things are pretty slow. The GLP sort of boom is starting to, I don't think it's starting to fade per se, but like the rest of the industry that doesn't have GLPs is kind of tired. There is this attempt to sort of contrive AI into biopharma, and it's not going very well. The markets don't believe it. Certainly big pharma doesn't believe it. And the handful of biotechs that are trying to shoehorn AI into their existence, and maybe they'll be talking about quantum soon too, it just sort of hasn't panned out very well for most of these. AstraZeneca actually has a IonQ contract, so go figure. But in any event, let's see what else is going on in the market that's really exciting. Obviously, Intel's CEO change is really big deal, and the question is, who can actually lead that company to success after multiple failed leaders? And my joke is they should get Mark Andreessen or someone like that to run it. They'd have to pay him like $5 or $10 billion. I think he's very happy where he's at now, doing what he's doing. But the joke is like, who could guarantee success? And if you're Intel, you have currency, you have your stock, you have cash. And because if we go from a $100 billion Intel to a $50 billion Intel or a $25 billion Intel, like Texas Instruments is worth more than Intel now. Intel used to be far and away the biggest semi company, and it's now like number 8 or something. Like Micron's bigger than Intel. Like it's a joke. So, I don't know what you have to do to get a talented leader at Intel, but it's I don't know who can fill those shoes. Like even in your dream list of CEOs, I'm having a hard time like thinking about who's technical enough and who's leader enough. Maybe it doesn't matter if you're technical even for a job like Intel, but it would seem like you'd want a very technical leader, but it hasn't worked for them.
George Hotz.
Oh my God, George Hotz, CEO of Intel.
I'm not a finance student, but
that's a gamble. I love it.
I might as well at this point.
It's so crazy it might work. Elon maybe?
He's not going to do it.
I was gonna say that.
He's not going to do it. George might actually do it.
George would do it. George wanted to like acquire Qualcomm or something crazy, but I think Elon could do it in his spare time. What's one more? At the end of the day, one more kid, one more company. What difference does it make? He's Superman. He could quit Diablo and run Intel on the side.
Well, I feel like if he did that, you just like fold it into Dojo, right?
Sure. I mean, whatever the case is, Intel would strategically be somewhat relevant to him, I think. And imagine him walking around like the old stodgy Intel people and just like shaking it up and firing everyone. It would be quite entertaining. What'd you do this week? That kind of attitude is kind of what Intel does need. But yeah, short of Elon, I'm not sure who could actually turn this ship around because it's been so ugly and terrible.
Put in 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏.
Oh geez, yeah. That would be the end of the American semiconductor industry. It would be so bad it would hurt other companies. Like
Yep.
it would somehow hurt every other company too. AMD would go down the tube somehow. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of excited. I think the market's excited too about people like David Sachs joining government and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You asked earlier about like what's the future of Truth Social, right? So I think in terms of what replaced the previous GOP, which was the Bush Cheney republicanism, it was replaced by Trump. So in 4 years, we're starting to see that Silicon Valley great tribe, Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy, all these Republican Silicon Valley class, suit class executives taking hold of Republicans in the next 4 years, then I think the MAGA Republicanism would die, and through Truth Social. I mean, that's the whole theory.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard for Trump to convert his movement to dollars. It's just very difficult. People were much more willing to vote than to join a social network. So, and after 4 years from now, I don't see how the social network exists. So they have to pivot, and pivoting is always like, what do they just buy Bitcoin or like? By the way, I'm short MicroStrategy too, which has been a little painful, but fun nevertheless. This is like gotta end poorly, right? I think Saylor's insane. I think he's just drunk on, this like big bubble, and there's just no way this could end well. And his last company, the same exact thing happened. He just sort of went gaga, and the biggest Bitcoin bulls aren't as bullish as him. Like he's so out there, and it's not credible. Like he's not a good advocate for Bitcoin. And Microsoft had this like thing where they voted on whether or not the shareholders voted on whether or not they wanted to put any amount of their treasury in Bitcoin, and it came back 0.5%, which is like, as somebody who's run proxy contests, is the worst vote I've ever seen in the history of like proxy voting. Like that is, I want to look into it some more, but that is like horrible. It is so hard to get that low of a score. So I think Saylor sort of is not the best advocate, even though he's the loudest advocate. And yeah, I'm starting to actually turn somewhat bearish on Bitcoin, honestly. I think the consensus has moved to kind of where I was, and it's a little bit hard to see the bull case. It's everything's kind of consensus now. So usually in the market, when the bull case has become consensus and all the lemmings are in, that's usually the top. I still like Bitcoin conceptually, but the prices, prognosticating the price isn't easy, and it feels like the marginal buyers is out now. Saylor spent billions of dollars buying at this price, and it's all but sort of gone down on him. He hasn't been able to push the price up, which is, if you put $10 billion in an asset and you can't move it, that's not bullish. that's really bearish. So it'll be interesting to see if what happens to Bitcoin. It doesn't mean it has to go down. It certainly doesn't. It could do anything. It's the price of it is, it could go to $150,000 tomorrow for all I know. But it doesn't seem like the U.S. will build a serious stockpile of Bitcoin, even though that's been discussed, and I've discussed it with the right people. And it's still probably not going to happen in any like very serious way. And if it does happen, maybe it gets undone by a future administration. I don't know. And I'm not even sure it's at this point anything but consensus. Like it's almost going to be bearish if they don't do it, and bearish if they only do a little bit. So to me, yeah, I don't see a real great path for Bitcoin. I only see bearish stuff. Like one of the biggest reasons, interestingly, to be bearish on Bitcoin is because of things like Doge, we need crypto less. And so crypto is a solution for 2008. 2008 was, okay, the government's out of control, they're spending too much, there's a crisis, we need to abandon the monetary system. And the craziness of government drops as a homeostatic mechanism. We now see people like Musk saying, hold on a second, this is out of hand, we need to fix this, I'm going to come in here and help fix it. When most of the time business leaders, and especially billionaires, don't want to be in government. It sucks, it doesn't pay, what's the point? I'd rather just be rich. That's why Bill Gates never joined government, that's why Warren Buffett never joined government, that's why George Soros never joined government. It's just stupid to do so if you're super rich. But push came to shove and Elon said, I have to do something. And he's not quite joining government, but in many ways is helping direct it. And so cutting the budget, it now paradoxically, they're talking about killing KYC. You kill KYC, what's the point of crypto? You kill the surveillance state, crypto is made to defeat the surveillance state. If you kill money printing and you restore like reasonable inflation with, not huge deficits or even, God forbid, a surplus, all the reasons so in crypto disappear. And you're sort of sitting there saying, well, what's the utility now? Crypto was born in a crisis. The Genesis block has the 2008 crisis inscribed in it. And so if things get back to like the Bill Clinton years of prosperity, like just unmatched prosperity, no inflation, huge growth, just success, crypto kind of looks silly. Crypto sort of flourishes in a time of like, oh man, maybe we were going to abandon the dollar, dollar's breaking, et cetera, et cetera. Dollar's never been stronger. And, you have to wonder if, what is the point of Bitcoin if, things return to like this idyllic state? Crypto kind of seems to do well in makes more sense in a crisis or in a surveillance state or in things like that. And it does seem like the new regime is going to want to crack down on that sort of behavior, which paradoxically kind of hurts crypto. And I still like crypto in like some really long term, but is Bitcoin the right thing to buy right now? It certainly seems to me like the answer is no. And for MicroStrategy, you're buying Bitcoin at like this 3x multiple, which, obviously if Bitcoin goes up, MicroStrategy goes up too. But there comes a point in time where that delta has to collapse. And you could certainly hedge a short of MicroStrategy with being long Bitcoin. So, I think if Bitcoin goes to 60K, which, many times Bitcoin has been very volatile, it's, certainly retraced 50, 70% from time to time. If that happens, I think MicroStrategy just gets walloped. And, I think it could happen.
How old is Bitcoin now? It's like 15 years old now, or 16, right?
2008.
Yeah,
16 almost.
16. Dude, look. I think of it more is going to be more like retirement funding, retirement savings, because it doesn't matter what happens in 40, 50 years. People are still going to gamble. Like even there's war and stuff. People, it's just like a gambling medium. So that's not going away. That's a stable base to support it. And it doesn't look like the algorithm's going away either, even if you count all the quantum computing stuff. You can't really run shorts against the SecP, no, what is it, like the 256K K1 curve? Like the curve is fine. The elliptical, like mathematically, is completely fine, even given the. Now, you never know. There's a new physics discovery that there's a chance that can happen, but it doesn't look like any of the quantum computing stuff is getting close to it. So whatever you do with it, even if you just invest in it as just like people are going to gamble, and this is the gambling ether that's mathematically proof against fraud, and you can build stuff on it, that's going to still be there.
It's hard to predict. It's hard to predict. I think that you could get this ennui that could occur. You can get people moving to different forms of crypto. You could get, you know, a pronounced long bear market that.
But there's a trust, though, right? There's Bitcoin is the most trusted because it's just been around now for close to 2 decades.
So what I'd say is like
and is the most robust.
it's not been through a bear market, interestingly. So the first real recession bear market in global, you know, kind of global economy, you know, it's not clear how Bitcoin would react to that kind of environment. You know, would it actually do well in a world where equities go down 40%? What does Bitcoin do? Some people would say maybe it would go down 90%. Some people would say maybe it would go up. I don't know. Nobody knows. But
people are going to gamble, though. So
not if you don't have money, Niston. I mean, in bad recession.
No, dude. People, the most broke.
No,
but
marginal.
The marginal
price is set by the marginal trade. So in an environment where, I remember 2008, you could buy Pfizer for 3 times earnings, right? The problem is nobody had capital. It was just redemption after redemption for funds. There was no VC deals going down, right? Tesla, he could barely close financing, and he had a strong track record as an entrepreneur, and he put his own money into the company and almost fell apart. So in times when capital is like really scarce, especially capital that doesn't want risk, and I'm not talking about individual people, I'm talking about, you know, firms, you know, in environments like that, people will seek to sell their risky assets. And Bitcoin, you would think, would be a risky asset, but we don't know what happens in that environment. We haven't seen a recession or anything that looked like a recession in a while, and 18 years really. We had a big one, obviously, but a serious recession where unemployment goes up a bit, you know, to something like 7 or 8% or more. You know, I don't know if Bitcoin does well in that environment, and we'll see. And there are trends that die over decades. Where people, you know, it's not like you can prove for sure Bitcoin's going to be exciting 20 years from now. We may look at it as a relic. We may look at
I want to stress 2 points that you said earlier. First, you said that the math is good because it can automate trust itself as a function, which is basically a psychological relationship between human beings, and it's automating that with mathematics. And second thing you said is that it's a crisis asset. You see, in South America, in several countries in Africa, when their currencies go basically worthless, they have switched to Bitcoin in some cases. So you have to look, and nobody's controlling it. Nobody, you cannot ban 2 people using electronic devices. So in case of maybe equities go down 40% or anything, US defaults in its debt payment, I think Bitcoin is a good one. I think I read in some essay.
That's very well said. A lot of people overlook that, and that's actually one of the things that brings me to Spaces. Throughout the entire bear market, I would see people take advantage.
Which bear market? Which bear market?
The past like 2 years.
Wait, what bear market?
It wasn't necessarily a bear market. It was just kind of boring.
You said the words.
All right, yeah. Well, I would call it a fucking bear market.
The last 2 years were a bear market?
I felt like, in a way, it was, yeah.
I hate to say that your feelings don't matter, but the last 2 years have not been a bear market to anyone. This has been
it's a
very,
good time to
very
what is the alternative of
but I'm just
Bitcoin?
saying it's different.
It's gold, right? So I've read in an essay,
gold-like property, yeah.
1945, when there was war going on, Roosevelt actually administrated that confiscation of gold, possession of gold was illegal. Basically, the government controlled all of it, and then we returned to the Bretton Woods system, and then again back in the Nixon era where it's just paper money. So gold can be confiscated, and gold is a headache to hide, and Bitcoin is this. So we discuss about what is it actually worth? What does it actually mean in substance? So what we are actually doing is that we're using massive amounts of energy to compute a mathematics that gives us trust, and that itself has value. So that's why Bitcoin has value in innate of itself, and I think it's a crisis currency. So and it's the most robust one against all
That's very
cryptocurrencies.
well said. That's 100% what it is, and a lot of people overlook that. And there's so many people that are just looking to prey on all these people that are coming to the space to, buy more Bitcoin at the end of the day.